They told you that love would feel like warmth, like a calm breeze brushing against your skin, like safety. They said you'd just know that when the right man arrives, your body will exhale, your soul will soften, and your heart will rest. But what they didn't say is that sometimes what feels magnetic is not love, it's memory. Sometimes what keeps pulling you toward him is not fate. It's your wound calling for its next chapter. Today, we're unraveling 7 reasons you keep falling for him, even when your soul knows it's not love. These are not accidents. These are not failures. These are archetypal echoes, soul contracts, shadow lures. They are not signs you're broken. They are signs you are being initiated, because his chaos matches your first blueprint of love. The nervous system remembers what the mind forgets. If your childhood taught you that love came with unpredictability, withdrawal, or emotional intensity, then chaos becomes comfort. Your body doesn't crave safety. It craves familiarity. You fall for him, not because he makes you feel whole, but because he makes you feel home. Even if that home was haunted, you mistake survival for attraction. You confuse activation for connection, and deep inside, your inner child leans toward the fire because she's still trying to win the love she never received. This isn't love. It's unfinished trauma disguised as fate. Because your shadow is choosing, not your soul. You think you're choosing from desire, but often you're choosing from shadow. The unconscious part of you that feels unworthy is seeking a man who reflects that same belief back to you, not to punish you, but to expose the fracture. He doesn't choose you fully, and a part of you nods, quietly agreeing, I wouldn't choose me either, but the wound doesn't want to be ignored. So it crafts chemistry to keep you coming back again and again to the altar of your own abandonment, until you look deeper. Because pain feels like proof of depth somewhere along the way, you started equating emotional chaos with meaning. That if it hurts, it must be real. If it's calm, it must be boring. But love isn't meant to feel like war. It's not supposed to drown you in doubt and silence. Still, you chase the high, you romanticize the ache, because somewhere you've confused pain with passion, not because you're weak, but because your nervous system was wired in a battlefield. And you're only now realizing that you've never known peace long enough to call it love. Because he mirrors your repressed masculine. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Sometimes the man you obsess over is not a soulmate. He's a symbol of your own repressed masculine, your power, your voice, your ability to protect and penetrate the world. You're drawn to his confidence because you've abandoned your own. You crave his dominance because your inner protector went dormant, so you project your lost wholeness onto him until he becomes a god in your psyche. Not because he is divine, but because he carries what you forgot you had. Because drama is easier than intimacy. It sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes it's easier to navigate chaos than to be truly seen. Drama gives you something to fixate on, a distraction, a loop, because true intimacy requires exposure, vulnerability, stillness. So you stay in the storm, not because it feels good, but because it feels safer than silence, safer than letting someone love you without conditions, safer than showing the parts of you that still tremble, still ache, still fear they're too much. But that silence, that stillness, is where healing begins. Because he activates an ancient contract. Some connections are karmic, archetypal, designed not to last, but to awaken. You fall for him again and again because your souls remember something your mind doesn't. A contract, a mirror, a promise to trigger, wound, and stretch each other until one of you finally breaks the pattern. This is not punishment. It's purification. He's not your forever. He's your fire. And the pain you feel isn't just heartbreak. It's initiation into the version of you that no longer chases pain to feel alive, because you're finally ready to wake up at first. You think falling for the wrong man is a curse, but eventually you realize it's a call, a sacred invitation. Each heartbreak is a breadcrumb, leading you back to the place where you abandoned yourself. This isn't about blaming him or shaming you. It's about reclaiming your choice, seeing the pattern, and standing at the threshold of a new way of loving, one not based on wounds, but on worth. And so, dear one, if your heart is aching for someone who doesn't truly see you, know this: it's not weakness, it's not failure, it's memory, pattern, initiation. The soul doesn't seek comfort, it seeks truth. And the truth is, you were never meant to settle for fragments. You were born for wholeness. Let this be the last time you call longing love. Let this be the first time you choose yourself completely. If this spoke to you, this channel is your sanctuary, a place where shadow becomes sacred and pain becomes prophecy. Subscribe and come home to your inner self. Tell me in the comments, which part of you keeps falling, even when your soul whispers no? You think you're falling in love, but what if you're actually being pulled into a portal, a doorway, an initiation, not toward forever, but toward a buried piece of your psyche, when you feel that electric pull, that aching gravity, that obsession that borders on madness? It's not just desire, it's a mirror reflecting the part of you you've been exiling, the part that is finally ready to be felt. Love is rarely just about another person. Often it's the soul trying to reclaim itself through another's gaze. Because you're still trying to redeem the father, this one aches the most. Not every woman had a father who left, but many had one who was emotionally absent, unavailable, or conditional in his love. And when that's the first man you ever loved, it shapes what you think you deserve. So when a man appears with the same emotional texture, distant, intense, unreachable, something ancient stirs. Your little girl comes alive. Maybe this time, she says, if I love him hard enough, he'll stay, he'll see me. You're not falling in love. You're trying to rewrite your origin story. Because your feminine is still performing, not receiving. The unhealed feminine often performs for love. She becomes desirable, perfect, irresistible. She shines so brightly in his presence, hoping to be chosen. But real love doesn't ask you to perform. It asks you to receive. You fall for him because he becomes the judge, the god, the prize, and you play the role you know best, the one who earns. But this dynamic isn't love. It's a stage play written by patriarchy and rehearsed in trauma. You don't want his heart, you want his approval. And that's not intimacy, that's exhaustion. 10. Because you've confused possession with union. Desire wants to own, to consume, to have. But love, real love, wants to witness, to see, to honor. Possession says, you are mine. Union says, you are free and I will walk beside you. You fall for him because you think the fire means forever, but often fire is just a spark meant to show you the places in you that are still flammable. You don't need to own him. You need to meet the part of you that believes love only exists if it's claimed, controlled, or chased. Yes. Because you mistake being chosen for being loved. Being chosen can feel like love, especially when you've spent your life feeling invisible. When a man finally sees you, wants you, picks you, it feels like salvation. But love isn't about being chosen, it's about being met. And there's a sacred difference. You fall for him because he gives you attention, but does he give you presence? You fall for him because he says the right words, but does he see the real you beneath the mask? You fall for him because he wants you, but do you feel safe enough to want yourself when you're around him? Conclusion of part 2. This isn't about shaming your longing. This is about illuminating it. You don't fall for the wrong one because you're foolish. You fall for him because you're ready to remember something. And now, You get to choose again. If this touched you, I invite you to subscribe, not just to the channel, but to your own becoming. This space is for women who are ready to break spells, not hearts. Tell me in the comments, what truth in this journey cracked something open inside you? Not every love is personal. Some are mythic, ancient, archetypal. You don't just fall for a man, you fall into a story, a script written in the language of the collective unconscious. And unless you become aware of the role you're playing, the story will play you. What if this man is not a mistake, but a symbol? What if your ache is not about him, but about a forgotten part of your own feminine becoming? Because he carries the warrior, and you feel defenseless, you fall for the man who seems powerful, certain, sharp in his edges, a man who can conquer the world. Because somewhere in your lineage, or your life, you felt unprotected, and now you're feminine. Longs for the masculine to shield her. But the danger is this: when protection is outsourced, you become dependent. The real initiation is to awaken your own inner warrior, the one who draws boundaries, says no, and stands still in storms. He's not your savior. He's the reflection of your sleeping strength. Because he embodies the magician. And you feel powerless. The magician archetype is intoxicating. He's mysterious, creative, magnetic. He doesn't need approval. He bends the world with his mind. And when you've been trained to be obedient, accommodating, or invisible, he feels like rebellion and liberation. But this admiration can become obsession. You believe he holds the key, but the truth is your inner magician is asking to be born. You don't want his power, you want yours. And it's not lost, just hidden beneath years of self-abandonment. Because he awakens the lover, but you abandon the queen. The lover in you wants to merge, to lose herself, to dissolve in the beloved. She craves intensity, touch, obsession. But the queen, she doesn't chase, she doesn't beg, she chooses. When you fall into the lover and forget the queen, you lose yourself in him. You mistake intensity for intimacy. You pour your essence into someone who cannot hold it. The queen within waits, not to punish you, but to remind you that your longing is sacred and not everyone is worthy to hold it. Because he triggers your inner orphan, there's a child inside you who never felt chosen, who never felt seen, and she still lives inside your chest, whispering, "Am I good enough yet?" When a man arrives who gives you crumbs of affection and then pulls away, that child believes it's her fault. You fall for him not because of who he is, but because of who he represents. A hope, a chance to rewrite abandonment. But the deeper truth is this: she doesn't need him to choose her. She needs you to. 6. Because he feels like destiny. But he's actually a mirror. You swear the universe sent him. The signs, the synchronicities, the dreams, everything points to him. But sometimes destiny is a mirror, not a marriage. He's not your ending. He's your awakening, a walking symbol of your inner wounds, desires, and dormant power. You fall for him because he carries the frequency of a lesson you are finally ready to learn. And when the lesson lands, the longing fades, because you no longer need him to feel whole. Because you're finally ready to break the spell. Of spells aren't cast with candles. They're cast with trauma, with unmet needs, with unresolved grief. And every time you fall for the same kind of man, the spell deepens, until one day it breaks. And that breaking doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like silence, like boredom, like peace, like not texting back, like choosing your breath over his chaos. That's the revolution. When you realize you're not in love, you were just under a spell. And now, you're waking up. You are not foolish for loving deeply, for wanting wildly, for believing in forever. But now you see more clearly, the men you fall for are not just people. They are portals, each one carrying the energy of an archetype, an unmet need, or an invitation back to your own soul. If this part of the journey resonated, stay with us. The final part will take you into the true alchemy of heartbreak and how to transform longing into power. Subscribe to join this unfolding, and in the comments tell me, which archetype are you dancing with, and are you ready to lead the next step? This is where it all begins to shift. Not with answers, not with revenge, but with silence and presence. And a grief so sacred it could only come from love, not for him, but for yourself. You've wandered the myth, played the roles, been burned by the mirror. Now, it's time for the real alchemy, the kind that doesn't just end the story, but writes a new one. Because you're finally tired of abandoning yourself. Each time you chase him, you leave you. Each time you bend, you break yourself. Each time you shrink to be chosen, you choose someone else's love over your own. And one day, it stops. Not with a scream, but with a whisper, a moment, a mirror. A morning when you look at your own eyes and say, no more. That's not weakness, that's birth. That's the moment a woman returns to herself, is the moment the spell breaks. Try, because you see, he was the wound, not the healer. You thought his love would heal you, complete you, prove you were worthy. But now you see, he was the one who exposed the wound, not the one meant to heal it. He was the knife, the symbol, the sacred irritation that cracked open the lie. That your worth depends on being desired, that your wholeness lives in someone else's gaze. You're not healing from him. You're healing from the idea that you needed him. Because you choose wholeness over highs, the old you needed the spark, the chase, the chaos, the new you. She wants peace, wholeness, presence, not just in someone else, but in herself. You. Stop falling for him when you stop falling away from yourself. When you choose nourishment over intensity. When love stops being an escape and becomes a return, not to him, but to your own sacred stillness. Because you learn the language of your body, the body knows. She always knew. The tension in your chest, the ache in your gut, the shallow breath around him. These weren't chemistry, they were clues. You fall for him when you're disconnected from her. You rise when you listen, when you let your nervous system become your compass, when you ask, does this feel safe? Does this feel kind? When you learn to read your own sensations like scripture. 2. Because you realize your longing was never about him. This is the final revelation. The longing wasn't for him. It was for home, for belonging, for being seen, held, and loved without condition. He was just the canvas, the projection, the placeholder for a love you always deserved. And now, you give it to yourself. Because you reclaim the feminine as sacred. You were taught to ache, to prove, to earn love with sacrifice. But your feminine is not desperation. She is not scarcity. She is not a performance. She is sacred. She is enough. She is the silence between songs and the storm before bloom. When you remember this, you stop falling. You start rising. And every man who comes next will have to meet you there or be left behind. Because you become the one you were waiting for. This is the real ending. You don't find him. You become her, the woman who doesn't chase, who doesn't beg, who doesn't fracture herself to fit inside someone else's story. You become the woman who chooses herself, who holds herself, who becomes a sanctuary. And from that place, love becomes something entirely different. Not a fire to consume, but a flame that illuminates. You don't fall for the wrong men because you're broken. You fall for them because your soul is trying to wake you up, and now it has. This was never about him. It was about your return to the body, to the truth, to the throne. Thank you for walking this journey. Thank you for feeling this deeply. This space will always hold you. If this resonated, subscribe and let's keep rising. Tell me in the comments, what part of you are you finally ready to come home to?